Hey guys, welcome to Still Going Strong. My name is Robert. This is my wife Kaci, and man, we just we're really excited that you guys decided to come and check out this podcast. You know, here we're going to talk about a marriage that's not perfect, but we want to talk about marriage in the light of something that endures, something that is a covenant over convenience, faithfulness over feelings, and to love on purpose. So we're gonna dive in, and so you got a topic for us today?
You started it off.
I started what off? I didn't start nothing off.
Yeah, you did. You said you were going to start it off.
Oh, I was gonna start it off. Okay. Well, I got a story to tell you. So the other day I work at the steel factor or steel fabrication place, and this guy was unloading steel or help. Well, he was delivering the steel, and I was unloading it. And I don't even know how we got onto the conversation. And the guy goes, I've been, basically, he's like, I owe my wife a check, or I got to write my wife a check at the end of the week. I think he was talking about the fact that it was Friday, and that he's like, well, the only bad part is I got to write my wife a check. And I'm thinking, okay, are you divorced, separated, alimony? Is that what you're paying? And he goes, no. He goes, me and my wife has had separate checking accounts for 18 years. He goes, and I'm telling you, that's the way to go. And I told him, I said, I've been married for 20 years or almost 20 years. And I'm telling you that a joint checking account is the absolute way to go. And so I thought maybe that's what we could discuss today. We could discuss finances. So
Absolutely. And as far as a joint checking account, we had a joint checking account before we ever even got married.
Yep.
You added me onto your account that you had, and I started putting my money into that before we ever even actually got married.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and I don't even remember exactly why we did all that. I do remember that. However, you did have a checking account, and we still have both of those accounts.
Mm-hmm.
But the fact of the matter is both of our names are on it, and at the end of it, it's about one resource.
Yeah. I mean, the other account is more of like a savings account than a checking account. And I think the biggest reason why we made that decision is because I think that was one area where we kind of understood that it is ours. It's not about you versus me. It was ours together.
Yep.
Because that's something that was modeled for both of us.
Yeah. Whenever I was growing up, I mean, I'd never even thought of the concept of my parents had seven. Of course, my mom, she only worked like maybe once whenever I was at home, but for the most part, it was my dad that worked, and they shared their resources. And so whenever I hear nowadays that people have separate checking accounts, and that is my money and your money, it's just like that was never modeled for me. It was one account, and they pulled their resources together.
And even the Bible says that it is a partnership. So if you are completely a partnership with each other, then everything should be combined together, and you should be working at it as a partnership. You guys should be bringing everything together, making the decisions together, and it going out together.
Absolutely. Because I like to always go back to what I think, because, well, not what I think, but the Bible. Anytime you hear anybody talk about the Bible, they always say that normally the first time something is introduced in the Bible, that there is special significance to it. So I'm probably on this podcast, I'm always going to go back to the first marriage, which was Adam and Eve in the garden. And the fact of the matter is that it doesn't say it, but I know that it wasn't Eve grabbing her apples and Adam grabbing his, and they all pulling their resources. I mean, I know this is a bad example. This isn't the best example to use. But even in the fall, it was that she ate it, and then basically it sounds to me like she handed that same fruit to Adam, and then Adam ate. Okay, so the fact of the matter is, it wasn't that Eve pulled her apple and ate, and Adam pulled his apple and ate. They were sharing a resource.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that's a bad, but if you think about it again, they didn't have separate storehouses in the garden. They were all there to steward one thing, and that was the Garden of Eden. And, and Eve and Adam, they shared their resources. They shared the fruit. They shared in the work, they shared in the labor, and they also shared in the fruit.
Mm-hmm. Well, and another example to think of is another one that I just thought about was not that they made the right decision, but in License Fire, it doesn't talk about that they sold it and then he kept part and she kept part or any of that kind of stuff. It was theirs. They sold it. Granted, they made the wrong decision and didn't give it to the church, even though they said they did. Not that they had to give it to the church, but they lied about saying that they gave everything to the church, even though they held part of it back.
Yep.
But it didn't say that he held part of it back or she held part of it back. They held part of it back.
Yeah.
Because it was theirs together, because they're married. And so, even in that day, women weren't working. I do think that that's probably where a lot of it stems from nowadays, is because, not too long ago, women didn't work. It was only the men that were working. Like, with your parents, it was mostly your dad who was working and bringing the money. So, if your mom wasn't on that account, then she wouldn't have had any money to spend and get groceries or whatever she needed. And so I feel like it's kind of almost that woman empowerment kind of thing that people go for is because I'm working, this is my money. I get to do what I want to with it. I get to make the decision with it. And I can't speak for men because I'm not a man, obviously, but I don't know. I assume that men probably feel that same way. I worked for it. I earned it. This is mine.
I think honestly, I think that's where a lot of, money, argue, because they say that one of the things that you really shouldn't argue about or you shouldn't really talk about marriage is money or however, that basically money is one of the things that causes the most divorces is money. And I think honestly, I think that's where you're at is the fact that each side, because I'm like that. I'm like that too. I mean, I admit that I feel like I worked for it. I should. And I think maybe even like with our recent discussions, some of the things that I struggle with is the fact that, that I work hard and, and there's these things that I want to do. But at the end of the day, even though that I worked hard and yes, I earned the cash and I earned the money, at the same thing, it's not my money and it's not your money. We're still stewarding that together. It's no different than if it wasn't money and you and I were in the Garden of Eden. Mm-hmm. It's what I collected in the day and it's what you collected in the day. Mm-hmm. And we share that together. Just like them going out and getting the manna. They all went out and they all collected the manna and they pooled the resources and they shared the manna. And it says that the ones that gathered the same people that gathered too much ended up having just enough. And the people that gathered too little, guess what? They still had enough. Mm-hmm. Because God allows that to be possible. God allows that whatever little that we steward and that we're taking care of, if we're faithful in that little bit, God says that if you're faithful in little, I'll give you more.
Well, and I mean, we've seen God be faithful whenever we're stewarding it, because we've had those times where we had to have food stamps, where we had to ask for people for money. We still tithe off of those things that were given to us, even though we didn't have the money to do so.
Yep.
And we still saw God be faithful in that and still be able to pay our bills and still be able to get through all of it. Because he is a faithful God. He absolutely takes care of us. And so we've seen a lot of those things and seen him come through and all of that. Yep. But I like to think about that of how would it have been if we would have been separated in those times? Because then the burden isn't falling on both of us. The burden is only falling on one person or each person separately or whatever, whenever you're not combining your stuff together. Like even, for instance, whenever you're not making decisions together, so to speak.
Yep.
There was a time where you were completely in charge of all of our finances, where you paid all of our bills. You were the one in charge of everything coming in, everything going out. You have made a decision about everything.
Yep.
And now it is more along the lines of I'm the one that pays the bills and makes sure that everything gets paid.
Because I did not do a good job. I'll be honest. BC me, I did not do a good job with it, and yeah. So,
but that doesn't necessarily mean that I'm in control of the money, because we still make the decisions together. Yeah. We make the decision of what we're saving for. We make the decision of how much money we're going to spend and groceries or eating out. We make those decisions together
Yep.
so that the burden falls on both of us. If we don't have enough money to do it, the burden falls on both of us. If we're not joining our resources together, we can't share that burden. You run the risk of one person always having plenty and being able to go over the top and do whatever they want,
Yep.
and one person never having enough and always having that burden of never having enough.
And I just can't understand that, because you're in one house. I mean, I really don't even get it as us as a community, as a country, that there's so many people that struggle day to day, and there's so many that have enough. I understand that. I think the people that work hard and are smart and do things, I do believe that, yes, they do work and they earn it. They earn that living. However, we should all remember that we all have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God, and that what, there's brothers and sisters, and sometimes by helping a brother and sister out, and this is just, like I said, worldwide, is that sometimes we store up treasures in heaven by doing that. But getting down to the local, the two people in a marriage, if one of them's struggling and one of them, I mean, I just don't understand it. Because to me, you are in one, you are both gathering together. It goes back to that. You're both gathering together. And the fact of the matter is that the one that is gathering, that, if you guys are gathering together, you guys are reaping in it together. You're pulling from the resource together. And if one person feels like, man, I'm just struggling to take care of the things that I need to take care of, while this person over here has basically zero disregard for how what I need to accomplish, and they're just willy-nilly spending, their share, when it's all a group, if you had something going on, if you have something going on and I have the resources, why? I mean, I don't understand it. That's just like a non-essential. Yeah, I may think about it if it's, some guy over here that maybe be struggling. Okay, I'll have to think about if I have that resource and I have that ability to help. But if my wife is struggling with something, if she feels like she doesn't have, or she hasn't brought in enough to be able to secure things that she needs to get done, why not? I mean, there's no question about it in my mind.
Yeah. Well, but I think part of that is if you are separate, you might not even necessarily know. I mean, because let's face it, as individuals, we don't necessarily like talking about money. We probably made a lot of people kind of fearful where they turn this on and, oh, hey, they're talking about money. Are we sure about that?
Yes.
So people don't like talking about money.
Yep.
And if you're in an intimate relationship with somebody that you're so close to, you don't want to admit that you're struggling with something or that you're even failing with something. And so, I mean, that might be a battle that they're having to face on their own. If you guys are separate, you might not even know what they're dealing with because you're not together in it. You're completely separate in it.
And if you're like that, if you are not united, then the devil has division.
Absolutely.
And the thing is that you have to remember in this marriage that you have struck a covenant. You have struck a covenant, and God's serious about covenants. Like talking about Abraham, and Abraham, whenever he struck his covenant with Abraham, and it talks about, dividing it. They divided the carcasses in half, and then in that both people are supposed to walk between the carcasses. But then God makes Abraham fall asleep and say, you know what? And that's basically God saying, look, I will shoulder this covenant. This covenant is on me. But in a normal covenant, two people walk between the halves. And the thing is that you and I are in a covenant marriage together. We are in a covenant marriage bound by God. And the fact of the matter is that if we stay divided in even one thing, then that gives the enemy a easy way in to say, okay, if they're not united in this, then I can use this to divide them.
Mm-hmm.
And I think maybe that is why so many people, divorce over money, because the simple fact of the matter is the devil tries to get each of these people to say, okay, well, this is my money and this is my money. And I'm sorry, you don't have enough money, but I've got my money to do my things. And I'm going to buy these cars and motorcycles and this and that. And, if you don't have that money, well, then I guess you just get to sit at home and, mess with what little money I do decide to throw your way. It doesn't work like that. It's united. You don't have to have the 15 different motorcycles. You don't have to have the car and the boat and the four-wheeler and the SUV and the skid steer and all that stuff, while your wife gets to sit in a house and be thankful in the house that she sits in. That's not how this works.
Yeah.
That if your wife doesn't work and she's sitting at home and she's taking care of the kids, then you know what? She's earning a wage that, honestly, if we as men would really like to admit, that's something that money can't buy, because our kids are getting raised by our wonderful wives and raising up our children in the ways of the Lord. And we have to take care of them, and we have to make them feel loved and appreciated. And sometimes that's, it's with our time, it's with our efforts, it's with our love, it's with our affection. And sometimes it's saying, okay, what's mine is yours and yours is mine. That's how this works.
Absolutely. It's completely how it works. There's been time in our marriage where you've made significantly more than me. There's been times in our marriage that I've made significantly more than you. But it was never about that. It was never, I make more, so I get to spend more. It's never been about that.
Yep.
We made the decisions together, even whenever one person was in charge of it versus the other. We made those decisions together.
Yeah.
But I think ultimately, when it comes down to, a lot of times, what I kind of see from the outside for people who are having those separate finances, so to speak, is that ultimately they don't have trust. Either they don't have trust in their spouse. They think that their spouse is going to completely blow everything and not leave what they need or something. Or, it is possible that there is some very valid reason why they don't trust their spouse with money. But and in that case, there needs to be safeguards in place, and you need to figure out what's going on with that. But the decisions still need to be made together. Maybe he needs a mountain out of his name on the checking account to have full access to all of your money to be able to blow it on gambling. You don't know that.
You're right.
But the decisions still need to be made together. You need to decide how much you're spending on groceries, how much you're putting in savings, how much you're spending on the cell phone bill. You still need to make those decisions together so that you're actually stewarding what God has given you together. And ultimately, I think it actually can even boil down even further than that to not trusting your spouse is not trusting God.
Yeah.
And not trusting that, you know what, if this person that God gave to me does make the wrong decision with money, that, oh, hey, yeah, God's just going to leave me there.
Yeah.
You're not trusting what God has given to you.
Yep. Yeah. Oh, no, I agree absolutely 100%. The fact is that God owns the cattle on 1,000 hills. So don't think for a moment that I mean, if we're in a relationship with God, God loves his children. God watches over his children. He does miraculous things for us. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't, like you said, there's got to be safeguards in place. And maybe that is therapy, maybe that whatever that looks like, however that looks like. But the fact of the matter is it comes back to this. If there isn't any of that major issues going on, if that isn't, like you said, one person's, gambling away their entire paycheck, if it's not something horrible and could be detrimental to your entire family, then why, if it's not that, then what is causing you to not be united, especially in your resources?
Yeah.
I totally get it. I totally get it. It would have been a totally different story if Adam and Eve, gathered their fruit, and Adam goes and throws it into the river and lets it float down the river. I understand that. At that some point, okay, maybe there does need to be two piles. And one's a significantly smaller pile, and and what you got is what you got, and somebody has to be a steward of it.
Mm-hmm.
So I get that, but anything other than that, man, when you allow something as trivial as our resources to be something that we can find division in, you're just asking the enemy to divide you. You're just asking him to split you.
Absolutely. Well, and I mean, there are times even now where we have issues when in regards to our money of yes, ultimately we make the decision together.
Yeah.
And ultimately we talk about it and neither one of us is going off and blowing a bunch of money without the other one. But yeah, there are times that we still disagree about, but we talk through it and we figure it out and we make the decision together.
Yeah.
And ultimately I think that is the important part of it. That every decision has to be made together because otherwise you're not really a true marriage because you're not really making every decision together. And I feel like finances can be a big thing. You know, you talked about that it is one of the number one reasons for people to get divorced. And I feel like a lot of that is because we are all selfish beings. We are. And so no matter how we want to look at it, we're going to be doing something selfish. And we talked about that sometimes it's kind of hard having a shared checking account because, you know, we both have access to that. So we can't surprise each other or do something nice for each other. So, I mean, there are downfalls. We have to be careful. And, you know, maybe we do talk about it and draw a little bit of cash and spend the cash on it so the other person can't see where that money was spent so that we can surprise them. And it's not to say that we shouldn't each have our own little pot of money that we can spend on what we want to spend on. However, right now, you know, we don't have the ability to make decisions like that.
Yep.
But if you are in an aspect where you can have free money, so to speak, where it isn't specifically tied to a specific purpose, then absolutely, there's nothing wrong with you having a little bit of spending money, me having a little bit of spending money, and not having to necessarily answer for that little bit.
Yep.
There's nothing wrong with that. Not every little thing like, okay, I want to go to McDonald's and have lunch today needs to be decided between each other if you guys have a little bit extra money to do that. But the bulk of where your money is going to get spent, that part needs to be made together.
And that even that decision to the point of, do we have that extra spending money? Do we have that little bit of play in there? I mean, but again, it all comes back to the simple fact that you're one flesh. You know, yeah, you may have two pockets in your jeans, but it's still in one body, and you know, it's a little difficult, but one hand can reach in both pockets, and all four pockets or whatever. That's just at the end of the day, you are one flesh. It is one covenant under God, and you just got to make sure that you're doing the right thing because again, when you're not in God's will, that God can turn around or if you're not in right relationship, right standing and things that God wants you, he will absolutely correct. He will correct you in it.
Yeah, like right now we have our biblical discipleship class going on and we talked about discipline. You know, God does discipline us for not doing the things that he wants us to do. And majority of the time in that instance, if we are being disciplined, a lot of times that discipline stops whenever we make the right decision and we're doing what he's asking us to do.
Yep.
Not always. Sometimes there are lasting consequences to the things that we do wrong. But majority of the time, that discipline is going to stop once we actually make that right decision.
Absolutely.
Now, I do want to say that we're not saying, you know, take our word on it and you have to do this right now. We are asking you to pray about it. We're saying take it to God. God will show you exactly what you need to do. All you need to do is listen to him, not us.
Oh, no. Yeah. At the end of all of this, all we're telling you is that financial stewardship is something that is serious in a covenant marriage because it does cause division. So if it causes division, then that means that that's something you have to take a united front on. I mean, anything, if you hear us talk about anything, really, truly, honestly, some of that stuff has divided marriages, and you can go and you can look at some of the divorce rates and what has caused divorces in marriages. And you can look at that, and that can be your battle list and say, okay, this is the list of my marriage, of things in my marriage that I need to make sure that there is no cracks or kinks in the armor, because the devil has no problem using the same old tricks that he used with Joe Guy down the street for your marriage. So I want to just say I am so thankful that you guys decided to come and check out this podcast. I want you guys to remember this one thing with me, okay? What God has joined together, let no one separate. And by that I don't mean don't let culture separate us, don't let pride separate us, don't let pressure separate us. We want you to be able to protect your covenant and absolutely love on purpose. And we hope to see you next time. Still going strong. Have a great week.